And I decided that my calling was to go be a doctor in a smallish town. And I did that for 20 years. But I had this Robert Wood Johnson fellowship training always in the back of my mind. And as we got through the late 90s, it became clear that the drug companies were influencing what was in the journals. And then the drug, do you remember the drug Vioxx? It was an arthritis drug.
I have a friend who had a stroke after taking Vioxx.
Yeah. So, I got a letter from a mother whose child died, 17-year-old child died from taking Vioxx, 8 samples of Vioxx.
The pain of osteoarthritis.
Vioxx is here, a prescription medicine for osteoarthritis pain. With one little pill a day, Vioxx can provide powerful
But Vioxx came along, and there was an article in the New England Journal that Merck had sponsored, and it said it was safe and was advantageous, not because it was any more effective, but because it reduced the risk of serious GI problems. And then there was another article in the New England Journal of Medicine that fessed up to cardiovascular problems. But the review article said this may be due to the play of chance because there were only 70 events, and such a small number of events is subject to statistical variation.
rare cases, serious stomach problems such as bleeding can occur without warning. Tell your doctor if you have liver or kidney problems. For more information, talk to your doctor about once daily Vioxx for the relief of osteoarthritis.
And I knew that that was crazy because there were only 53 serious GI events, which was the whole reason for selling this $2 billion a year drug, was that it was safer on the GI tract, and there were only 53 events.
It was an anti-inflammatory, right? It was like...
Yeah, exactly.
You were in the midst of the crisis with the Vioxx, a drug designed to be less harmful to the stomach, pain reliever better than aspirin, ibuprofen, but had side effects, heart attacks, strokes. You and 2 others made the decision you had to yank the drug.
So the idea was that was better than non-steroidal anti-inflammatories?
Exactly, because it didn't upset the stomach the same way. And the science was elegant, and it might have worked, but it didn't.
Which was that this company knowingly and intentionally put patient health at risk was something we could not
Profits
accept.
before people see.
Exactly. So this litigation, the defense of the litigation, was about vindicating the company's values.
And in changing that balance, it made the blood more likely to form clots. The physiology was a little more complicated than just stomach or no stomach.
And is something like this, the issue is the size of the trial, because you could have 10 people and none of them could have a problem, but you could have 10,000 people and you could have quite a few problems. So you have to make this study as large as possible so you get all this biological variation between human beings where different things affect different people in different ways.
That's part of it. And you can have a study of 8,000 people where you leave out 3 heart attacks and you flip the statistics and claim that there's not a cardiovascular risk.
Okay, so it was fraud.
It was fraud. And you couldn't tell the fraud from the article in the New England Journal. Merck had submitted this data to the New England Journal, and they did what peer reviewers do, which is not have the data, but make sure that the article makes internal sense. They published the article. And then this review article came along, and they gave a little bit more insight into the cardiovascular problems, but they blew it off as the play of chance because there were only 70 events. And that was crazy. And at that point, I was sitting in my office at lunchtime reading, taking a break between sessions, reading this article. And I said, that's it. I got to figure this out. There's something so wrong going on here that it's beyond my comprehension. So an article was published in JAMA 2 weeks later that had a footnote that led to an FDA website that had enough data to see that Merck had been fraudulent about the heart attacks. And when I saw that, I said, I'm going to leave practice and I'm going to figure this out. And I worked for 2 years on a book called Overdosed America. It was published in 2004, and it had the Vioxx story in it. And a week after that book was published, Vioxx was pulled from the market. It wasn't my doing. another study Merck had done a second study that showed the same thing, that the risk of strokes and heart attacks and blood clots was doubled. And at that point, they had to pull it because they were hiding the data on this first study. Now the second study came along, and it was clear that the jig was up for them.
And how long had they been prescribing and distributing Vioxx at that point?
It came out in May of '99, and that was September of 2004.
Wow.
And so from our perspective, knowing that we had brought this upon ourselves by voluntarily withdrawing the drug when we first saw what we thought was pretty good evidence that there was a disparity in terms of the number of heart attacks on the drug, we thought that was the right thing to do in withdrawing it.
So between 20 and 25 million Americans had taken Vioxx, and between 40 and 60,000 Americans had died.
And so we decided to fight the cases, and we tried something like 19 of them. And we lost the first one pretty badly. But towards the end, I think we won something like 8 of the last 10 cases because we could convince juries that the company was trying to do the right thing, that we were imperfect, that if you took a drug like that and put it in a large enough population for a long enough period of time, you were bound to learn some things about it that you didn't know in the clinical trials. And, you know, frankly, I'm a big believer in the jury system. And the juries understood that there was no perfect system for developing drugs. And by and large, they sided with us, which is why the settlement number was a tenth of what people expected it to be.
Died from the cardiovascular consequences of Vioxx, as in the same ballpark as the number of Americans who died in Vietnam.
And of course, the trial bar just licked their chops like flies to a carcass and just descended. Experts said it would take $50 billion to settle these cases. And most companies would say, okay, we'll find a way to do it, just settle them all. And you made the point, no. We're going to fight every case, take them one by one, judge them by their merits, and not roll over. And you fought this. Tell us the moral reason you fought it, both in terms of the ethos of Merck and just simple justice, that if you were done a wrong, fine, but if you're just part of a sweep just to extract money, you weren't going to do it, which was very rare. It still is in companies today.
So a couple of points I would make. First of all, you know, a lot of people look at the whole Vioxx situation as a legal strategy. If you were inside Merck, the fundamental allegation in that litigation, and then we said we're not going to let a group of, I use the word rapacious lawyers, take the company under. Because we did the right thing in our estimation.
Vultures, parasites, whatever word you want to use. Yes.
So we decided that it was important for us to not let the word Vioxx become, in effect, a verbal shorthand for corporate greed and corporate wrongdoing.
Or 4.85 billion instead of 50.
It's really just still real money.
What the fuck, bro?